what it is. We have arrived at a point in our country that we should recognize this is not just a moment, it is a movement. It is a movement that is fueled by the diversity, the beautiful diversity of who we are coming together as a unified body, demanding, in this case, change and justice for everyone.
As a senator, as a politician, someone who has to respond to constituents, what do these protests mean to the ability to affect change legislatively? Because the reason I ask is because I woke up this morning, I looked down, we do like a news breakdown at night, a news breakdown in the morning, I looked at everything out, where's the report on the protests? Well, are they gone? Are we not just talking about them anymore? Because it seems to me it has to be sustained in order to maintain the pressure and to maintain that commonality of purpose for people of all races in the United States to bring this kind of justice that's being called for. How important is it for these protests to continue?
It's critically important, and I'm going to tell you something. I made a very conscious decision to become a prosecutor. I grew up in a community that was not always on the best end of law enforcement in terms of how the laws were applied. There's not a black man I know, be he a relative or a friend, who has not been the subject of some form of racial profiling or excessive force. So when I made a decision to become a prosecutor, it was a conscious decision, which was to go inside the system and have some leverage there to effectuate change. I say that to say this. The only way we're going to truly achieve change is when there are people in the system who are willing or pushing to do it, and when there are those folks who are outside of the system demanding it. I am very clear that some of the success that we've been able to achieve around criminal justice reform would not have happened in recent years were it not for Black Lives Matter. And the intensity and the brilliance of that movement that forced at least that there would be some counterforce to the status quo, which is so reluctant for change, if not hostile to change. That's what these movements do. That where these systems are so invested and ingrained in what they call tradition, but is status quo, often which can be wrong-headed, these movements provide a counterforce to get us to where we need to be.
So even what some might call weak tea proposals by the Republicans right now wouldn't be happening if there weren't these protests in the streets.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. And it's tragic because the reality is that these protests have been happening in maybe smaller form for generations, but let's just look at where we are right now and acknowledge, to your point, had these protests had people by the hundreds of thousands not been out there marching, many of whom might be relatives of those very people who have been obstructionists until now, we probably wouldn't be where we are. But again, back to where we are, what the Republicans are proposing is by many accounts, and certainly by my account, absolutely insufficient to meet this moment. And we need to go with the Justice and Policing bill.
And I want to make clear that I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
That's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right.